Hi guys, and welcome once again to Piano and Keyboard Artists, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards and synthesizers. And my special guest once again is the legendary, the one and only Mr. Brian Griffin. Brian, how are you?
Pretty good today. Very happy.
So this is part of the ongoing series that I have, which is the Depeche Mode Album Review series, where I review all Depeche Mode albums from Speak and Spell all the way to their current album Spirit. And then alongside with that album review series, I've got my friend Mr. Brian Griffin here, who's going to be talking about his time with Depeche Mode. And as you all know, Brian did all the album covers for from Speak and Spell all the way up to Black Celebration. So the Brian Griffin series will be running in parallel with the Depeche Mode album review series. Now, I've just finished the first interview with Brian, and I did the album review series on the first album, which was Speak and Spell. All those links will be posted below this video. Whew, and that's a mouthful. And today we're going to get on to the second album which Depeche Mode did, which was A Broken Frame. And as Brian once described this as the Mona Lisa of the Depeche Mode.
Did I? Oh,
I think you did. You think you said it was the Mona Lisa of the Depeche Mode album series, or covers, or the Holy Grail, as some have said.
Could be Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
It is the best, isn't it? It's the best cover that Depeche Mode have ever done. Anton didn't do anything anywhere minutely as good as this.
Anton, if you're watching, we'll get you on in the next series, hopefully, and you can defend yourself. But it's interesting, and as I said, we don't want to start a sort of a rivalry here. I'm definitely not trying to be diplomatic or politically correct, but I do. And the great thing is that Brian's artwork is so different to Anton's that they sort of served different roles. I mean, Anton's role was very good, sort of giving them that darker image at the time that they were needed. He came around at the right time, but I think a lot of personally from what my subscribers have said, as far as pieces of art go, I think Brian's artwork is stronger. I personally feel that as well. I think Anton was great at sort of helping Depeche just develop their image. But I think if we just take the album covers as works of art, I think Brian's are going to, stand out head and shoulders. And I think you agree with that, Brian, don't you?
Oh, most definitely.
Most definitely.
I'm not going to disagree with it, am I? Nothing against Anton at all, but, he's just a photographer.
Let's jump into the album, which is arguably, and this was rated as, I can't remember where I read this, Brian, but actually Google this up on Google, guys, and you'll actually see that this print for A Broken Frame, this photograph, has been rated technically one of the most technically perfect photos of the last 30 years. Or something like that. I don't know exactly how they're going to, rate that or judge that, but
yeah, it's very good. I mean, the way they think it's so good. I imagine it's probably the most famous colour photograph in the history of photography, really.
Yeah.
Although I don't want to boast too much.
Well, that's.
But it is a phenomenal piece of work, even by me, really, and I'm really chuffed with it. And it's always rated extremely highly. Sgt. Pepper, obviously, is always regarded as the greatest album cover ever in all album cover league tables.
Yeah.
This comes about 6, I think, or 8 or 11.
Oh, really? Wow.
It doesn't go really as high as it should.
Right.
But it's not judged on the quality of the image, I don't think. It's judged on what people generally just think about it.
But then again, who judge? You get this thing called lies, damn lies, and statistics, and you get these polls, and it depends on who's in the poll, how many people, what kind of day are they having, what is their background.
Sure, of course.
There are all types of polls, and I mean, if you've got experts in, they would rate it accordingly. But if you've got just fans in, they would rate it according to what they feel. So you've got to be careful with polls and stuff. But it's interesting because if we sort of go back to the first album, or the first series we talked about, Speak and Spell, where you did the swan, which is covered in the plastic. Remember we joked about that, how a lot of people asked, how did you come up with that image? And as you said, it was such a long time ago, you'd like to sort of feel that you came up with the idea. And we also talked about how the band were horrified when they saw that album cover.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the reason I'm saying that is it's bringing me to this next question is, were you surprised when they got you in for the second album cover?
I think it was. I thought they'd never get me in. I mean, Daniel was so kind. I'm sure the band didn't really want me. But Daniel was so kind, he believed in me, you know, and he got me in to do the second one. And thank God he did, you know.
Well, do you... and obviously by doing this, if there was any doubt, you completely redeemed yourself with this. Because if there was any doubt with that first album cover, do you think Daniel got you back because it was maybe a convenience thing, like, oh, let's just get him back? Or in fact, I think we talked about this last time. I think Daniel actually liked the cover. I think it was the band who
didn't like it.
Yeah, because
everyone likes it now.
They do now, yes, but at the time,
I hated it, and I can understand it, and I understand why some of the band didn't really like it as well. But it's so interesting the way it's grown and grown and grown and grown, and now it's right up there with the rest, really.
Absolutely.
Whilst before it was almost a laughing stock, at the beginning. But it's not anymore, and it seems quite a relevant image. As we were talking in the last one, it seems quite relevant now because of the problem with plasticity.
That's right, yeah.
Plastic waste in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I see birds, with plastic hanging out their mouths and that. It's just horrible. So really, it's incredible how it's completely turned around, and it's such a modern image, Speak and Spell. It's so relevant to today. I mean, we never foresaw that, that's just, I think that's just a coincidence.
Ahead of your time, Brian, you were a visionary.
I would like to think so, but I don't think I was really. I think I just...
back in the day, they would have burned you at the stake and then realised you were, called you a heretic, but you're ahead of your time.
But I was a saint, yeah.
Saint Griffin.
Yeah, Saint Griffin.
Saint Griffin. So, as we say, the Speak and Spell album came out and they were like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And, but in retrospect, we look at it back now and it's, it'll be up there in, rock pop history with, as far as an outstanding album cover, be it controversial. So obviously it's 1982 and now Daniel's gone, okay, well, let's get Mr. Griffin back again. And there's a lot we can talk about this album cover. But as I say, if there was any doubt in your abilities after this, I think you'd completely blown any doubt out of the water. So the question I want to ask you is, Brian, and we're going to go into a lot of detail, but before we get there is, what was the band's initial reaction when they saw that?
I don't know.
Cut!
I don't know. I mean, the only reaction I remember is Daniel Miller coming down to my studio in Rotherhithe, and we were all sort of like smirking or chuckling to see his reaction.
Because you knew it was really good.
Oh, God.
Were you impressed
when you... It was unbelievable. We knew it was an unbelievable image.
So it surpassed your expectations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was... it was on the light box, sitting there waiting for Daniel to come down to the studio and remark on it. So we all sat on this sofa. When I say all, by the way, it's my assistant, myself, and the lady that ran my studio. The three of us sat on the sofa, which was about 40, 50 feet away from the table where the light box was. And Daniel came, we welcomed him, and he went over to the light box. All three of us just sat there and going, well,
this is going to be good.
And you got the little magnifying glass, of course, and you went down over the top of the transparency where the light was coming up through it. And I thought, if he could have I don't know what he could have levitated.
Do you wish you had filmed his reaction?
Oh, his reaction was unbelievable.
Really?
He couldn't contain himself. And I can understand why I couldn't contain myself when I first took the picture. I thought, I can't believe this. This is a gift from God, It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And I mean, because obviously Daniel Miller personally. I don't know him personally, but from what I've read about and seen in documentaries, he's an extremely intelligent man. He's very thoughtful, and he's not really animated and sort of loopy. But you say when he saw that, he was really sort of like, oh my God, this is incredible.
It took his breath away, He didn't know what to say, what to think. And then, of course, the inevitable then started to happen as the image went back to the record company and it started to appear in print and things like that. Well, people wanted to claim it, had no claim on it. Everyone wanted part of it, everybody wanted to be a part of the creation of this image.
And whereas a lot of them were ridiculing you of the Speak and Spell album, this comes out and they were like, oh no, Brian, the first one was brilliant, It's quite funny if you... Yeah, people can be really critical, but if you come up with something like this, then they will see the splendor in your first works.
Well, it was. You have to remember that this image grew from this point in time, and Like I was even had to go to the Royal Albert Hall onto the stage and things like that, you know, because this image was voted the greatest image of the year in Britain, you know.
Yeah.
And I had to go onto the stage of the Albert Hall. There was everyone in dinner suits and bow ties and things, and sitting at dinner tables, and up in the gods there were thousands of people, and I walked on the stage to pick my prize, you know, dressed as the Albert Hall, because I'd designed this outfit. Or in fact, the stylist who actually designed the outfit for the lady in the cornfield. It's a lady, by the way, lady in the cornfield, because I know some people think it's a man, but it's not. It's a lady.
Okay.
And she designed the Albert Hall outfit for me to fit inside. And I walked on the stage of the Albert Hall dressed as the building, and took my prize.
You got any photos?
Yeah, I got plenty of photos.
Okay, we'll get hold of those photos and we'll post them for you guys. Okay, so the lady that was filmed in this, who is she?
Well, she was a dancer. She was probably in her early 50s.
Oh, at the time?
At the time.
Is she? Are you still in touch with her? Do you know what her name is?
No.
Or? Okay.
I must admit.
But how did
what happens, though, photographically, is the fact that things grow in fame.
Yes.
From the initial process of it, i.e. prior to the picture being taken, just as the picture's been taken or whatever, everything's normal, everyday life. And then maybe a week later, a month later, a year later, a decade or two later, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So you forget a lot of details.
Exactly.
It's just another day of work, you know.
So it's 1982. You've just 1981. You finished Speak and Spell. Now they've come up with A Broken Frame. Daniel calls you up and says, "Brian, we need you again."
Yeah.
Depeche Mode. And then what? You meet at the studio and you meet the band and they tell you the album's called A Broken Frame.
Yeah.
Who came up with the title Broken Frame?
I don't know who came up with the title. I assume the band. I'm just going to assume it's the band. And I have no idea who came up with the idea for this shot. Because it was very much, as I said in the first episode of these broadcasts, is that Daniel and I would meet in the studio. The band would be doing something.
Playing table tennis or was it bar football tennis or whatever?
Or whatever they were doing.
Bar table football, yeah.
And I know they weren't listening to a playback because Daniel would be like really not necessarily in charge, but very much part of that. So obviously there's no music or playbacks playing.
Sure.
Gareth would probably be in the studio doing stuff, you know. And it was just me and Daniel sitting down, and then the band would join us, and then we'd sort of throw things around, the group of us, and then decide what to do, and then I'd just have to go off and do it.
So you didn't sort of hear any music first? It was just you?
No.
So the music's not really important. You don't really need to hear the music for you to come up with an image. So
never.
So they say that. So they, for instance, they would say Broken Frame, and then you'd go, okay. So I guess what I'm asking is, who came up with the idea of putting a girl in a cornfield?
Well, as I have said before, I think it's because I was becoming quite famous for photographing the worker.
Oh yes, workers. That's right. Yes.
So we started on that theme with this one, although this one wasn't anything to do with that. Certainly, this one was. It was a worker in a field, a farm worker. You know.
That's right.
And I think that's the reason it really came about.
It's interesting because just from sort of just digressing slightly, just to show relevance to this. Those workers series you did, there were a lot of them were in black and white, and it was like workers on the train stations and things. Because you are very well known for your black and white photography as well.
Yeah,
that's right.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning of my career, the man who started my career said I was the worst colour photographer he'd ever seen.
Oh, wonderful. Where's he now?
Unfortunately, he died
okay.
This year, which is rather unfortunate. But I proved him wrong in the end. But I mean, it took 10 years to prove him wrong, though, because I started in '72 as a photographer. As you know, this was '82, so.
So how did you deal with criticism as an artist and stuff? Are you able to sort of like do you take it on board badly, or do you just sort of like block it out and just?
I think
go with it.
I thoroughly believed in myself, so it helped to eradicate anything that was harmful or harsh that was said to me. Although I suppose I did, feel a little bit of hurt when people said horrible things.
No one likes to hear bad things said about them.
No, you don't really. And I was pushing so many different territories in the '70s. And at the very beginning of the 80s, I was doing all sorts of things a lot of people didn't like. And to keep, my attitude towards photographing people was terribly disliked in the UK. They didn't like my approach. I was heavily criticised. But I took that on the chin, really, and I still believed in myself, which thank God I did, because it could have eroded and eradicated.
Exactly, you had the strength of conviction.
My strength of conviction, which I wouldn't allow it.
Sure.
I believed in myself, really. Although I was rather fragile, because I was a young man, I was in my 20s, so I was relatively fragile, like a butterfly, fragile. I was, which I'm not so much now, of course, but I believed in my ability and my vision, and stuck with it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what were they critical about? Was it about the technical aspects of it, or was it more the subject matter? Because you did really odd things, with people, like doing really strange. Was it more like the poses and stuff? People felt it was quite pretentious.
Yeah, they felt I was making people look like marionettes. Very Kraftwerkian, I suppose you could say.
Which,
at the time, and all sorts of stuff, which I just blatantly ignored, really, and just carried on. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are hurt by these sort of statements and do follow criticism,
and they give up,
or they lose confidence. But you've just got to really stick up for things, and eventually sort of break through.
Yeah,
takes some time, actually.
Yeah.
Takes a lifetime.
So obviously, Brian, any sort of criticisms you had, how did your confidence go up after this? Was this like a massive boost for your confidence?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And it continued and continued and continued to be. I mean, it was a remarkable image, and no one could deny it. So then no one's ever criticised it, actually, to be honest.
Oh, really? No one's criticised it?
No one's been critical of it. Everyone's totally accepted it, which is really nice.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to relieve you of it now. So I want to ask you a few questions about this. And guys, as I say, in these questions, we're not scripted. We're just two friends in a room, and you're sitting there with us here. So just think we're three friends in a room. So later on, Brian has agreed we would, as some of you have agreed, do a live YouTube feed where you can ask questions. But also later on, Brian and I are going to probably do some events, probably some ticketed events where you can come over and, a question and answer with Brian Griffin. But that's another story. I want to get into some questions about this iconic album cover, Brian. So this was done in 1982. Where was this done?
It was done northeast of London, in very northern part of Essex, I think, in a place called Saffron Walden.
Okay.
Saffron Walden. It's up the M11 and off the M11, really. It's sort of like on the borders of Cambridgeshire, I think, and North Essex. Fairly flat land, actually. A bit like Texas, I suppose.
So the band said, okay, we've got an album called The Broken Frame, and then you obviously came up with this idea. So did you go location scouting?
We had to find a cornfield.
So you came up with the idea, I want a cornfield with a worker.
Yeah. I firmly believe so. Okay, we're talking about 1982 here, by the way.
Just the other day.
That's 40 years ago. I have always liked a painter called Millet, Millet.
That's right.
And I suppose it's a little bit Millet. But then I also like the movement in Russia, social realism, in the mid-20s, 1920s. And then I also like the beginning of social realism in the 30s in Germany as well. And so this was a touch of social realism. I learned a little bit about lighting people outdoors when I worked in America. I worked on Rolling Stone and Esquire magazine out of New York, and I learned how to mix flash with daylight out there, where the weather is normally, certainly over in California, weather's beautiful. And I employed that technique and ability to a broken frame. In other words, mixing flash, which is a and then the daylight, and mixing them and bringing them together. We use cameras I used the Hasselblad camera that had a Polaroid back that you fitted on the back, so you could check the balance of your light, until you were really happy with it. And so therefore you knew what you were getting.
I see.
Which was very important because it was quite expensive to go and do these shoots. We had a location bus, obviously, where it was like makeup, there was costume, dressing lady into the costume, and travel and food and toilets and things.
This is back in the day when things were done properly. I don't want to be nostalgic.
Yeah, it was really done properly.
There were budgets.
Yeah, they do it properly.
There was an attention to detail in art.
Nothing was cut back.
We talked about this last time, where artists today, there's not really attention, because I think things move so fast. It's like just get it out and get out the next thing and then get out the next thing. But I remember watching the Broken Frame documentary where you talked about there was something sort of like spiritual about this, where it was an overcast day, and then just at the right moment the clouds opened up. And could you explain a bit?
Yeah, I could. I mean, like, we were getting a little bit hungry, and the design of the sleeves for Depeche Mode at the time was Martin Atkins.
Yes.
It was very overcast. It'd been raining all in the location bus, all the way out of London, all the way out up the motorway. It was horrible grey, and it was horrible rain. And it was totally inappropriate to take photographs. Anyway, the rain eased, but the sky was still leaden and grey. And Martin, there with his motorbike, so we sent him off to get us some sausage sandwiches or bacon sandwiches.
So rock and roll. I love this backstory, the inside information.
And we sent him off. And after we'd sent him off, the sky opened. And of course, it had been such a grey, dull day with the sky opening. It was panic stations.
Oh, so you saw the moment and you ran, get the...
You got to grab it, because you thought it would just all block up again, and we'd lose the moment. So it's not like nonchalantly, I think we better take a photograph now. It wasn't any of that. It was like right on it. And then we zeroed right on it, and then we shot it as if it was like going out of fashion. And then we moved her, as you know, by the album cover itself and some of the other photographs you've probably seen on my website. We actually photographed her walking away for the back cover.
Which is
that one
the
there. We photographed her walking away for the back cover, and we photographed her walking as a side cover, which I don't think was ever used.
I'm checking the gatefold.
Used. No, so, and then of course they came in the studio for the inside the gatefold.
I see. There's another photo here where they're holding the sickle.
Yeah, well, the one actually Daniel Miller loves that picture, but I think they've only just used. He saw that in Poland. He saw that in Poland when I was launching my pop show.
Yeah.
Which was in October 2017. My show of pop photography. I gave Daniel the book. He was the first person to receive the pop book because it helped to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And he said, I love that photograph. And obviously they used it, in this new double this gatefold.
Well, I'd never seen it until I saw this.
He'd never seen it until the pop book.
That's awesome.
I'm sure he'd never had seen that image until he saw my pop book. Because that's black and white, you see.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was used then for this very well reproduced recreation of a broken frame, and reissue of a broken frame. So we did all this so rapid. I have to own up, it was probably half an hour or maybe 45 minutes at the most, because it was like the whole day was just full of grey clouds, and we thought we're just gonna have to drive back home, which is so expensive.
But the grey clouds initially, were you expecting open skies? Is that what you were initially expecting?
Well, I always wanted clouds in the sky, but not a profusion of them. I preferred a bit of blue, a bit of grey, a bit of white.
I see.
The finest clouds are blue, grey, white, and then blue for the sky, grey and white for the clouds.
So it was a bit too much. But then at this exact moment when Martin Atkins went to buy the sausage rolls, it all opened up and you just seized the opportunity and bang.
Grabbed it and shot it all. And it was all over in a very short period of time. Because then it greyed over again, it might have rained again. And we were so happy to have
So when you caught it, you knew you'd caught it. But you were, but you were pleasantly surprised when you got to the developing and you were like, oh my God, this is better than I thought.
The Polaroids were fantastic.
Oh, I see, okay.
It was as good as we hoped it would be.
Okay. Okay.
And because we were working so fast, and because the battery equipment at that time, it's far more powerful now. At that time, we're using 4 flash heads, German multi-blitz flash heads, which were not very powerful at all. And they're right on the edge of the photograph. Here they are. And by working rapidly, because you're bringing them in so close to the subject in order for them to bring the luminosity to the photograph, and they need every ounce of the power really of these lamps. We were getting flare from them because we were right on the edging, and we were quickly working and putting black card, so we didn't feel the flare from the lights or anything like that. And wow, we were working fast, but it took very, very short period of time to grab this. But we were all set up for it, We'd experimented and looked at things prior to it, the whole general situation, and. Sorry about it. Yeah.
No, that's fine. And I think obviously Kate Bush liked this image, and she.
Well, you have to. This image, when it was first made back in '82, was probably the most famous image of that year in the music industry. I'm not saying it was the best cover of the year. I'm not saying anything apart from the fact that it certainly was the most famous photograph on the cover of an album in this country that year, and probably the world, because. You have to remember what album covers did at that time. We didn't have social networking then. There was no way of communicating our work apart from, say, ads in the NME.
That's right, yeah.
Or the music press. But every shop at selling records in the whole of the country would have a display of these covers, in the window or inside the shop.
Yeah.
So it's like massive promotion of this image. Because Depeche Mode were a hit band, and so their album would be really well displayed in all the shops because they knew they'd make money out of Depeche Mode.
And then you're bolted onto it.
And everyone's seeing it, so everyone from Kate Bush to your mum and dad would have seen it. When your mum and dad went down to shop, at the grocers or wherever, they'd see it. And that was the wonderful thing about doing album covers in that point in time, is the fact they were posters all over the country of your work. So you gained even more work from it. Like Kodak, he wanted me to launch one of their films, their colour films. So they sent me over to Australia to find a cornfield do an equivalent to this image. To not the same image, it's a man holding up a baby, but to launch this new Kodak colour film. I flew first class over to Australia. So it became a very famous photograph,
Would you say it's one of your personal favourites? Is it? You think it's one of the best you've done?
Well, I think anybody who's a photographer would say it's one of the greatest photographs in the history of colour photography. One of them. I'm not going to say it is the greatest, but one of them. And it's probably it could be the most well-known colour photograph in the world now. If not, it's getting very close to it.
That's thanks to the Polish, of course, and the German fans.
Yeah, and thanks, don't forget also in 1989 when the wall came down in Berlin.
Yeah.
And I was driving over there to see the wall come down. I stopped at the border control because I used to smoke then, and I went in to get a packet of cigarettes into the shop at the border, and there was this cover on the front cover of Life magazine piled on top of the cigarette machine. And Life magazine, certainly up to that point in time, was the most famous magazine in the world, So it was a front cover of one of the most famous magazines in the world, and it was to illustrate a special supplement on the greatest photographs of the 80s. So, it was getting mega publicity. And has continued to do so.
That's true, and a lot, of course, Depeche Mode has always had its critics, as many bands do. But a lot of the criticisms at the time, I think, were a lot of people saying that their music was not worthy of this cover.
Yeah, and a lot of Depeche Mode fans say this is probably the weakest album they ever made.
Yeah, but with the strongest cover.
But with the strongest cover, yes.
Yeah. So as I say, this is definitely. And of course, I'm biased, and I've been a Depeche Mode fan for 100 years, as I'm sure many of you as well. So this image is so deeply ingrained into my psyche, and there's quite a lot of fans you have, Brian, that actually go to the locations and actually photograph themselves in these locations.
Well, it's interesting. I think when we climb up the albums I've done and we get to something like Some Great Reward.
Oh yeah.
I know I'm going home near that time, and I'll photograph myself or get my mate to photograph me outside the factory that still exists.
Oh, that's brilliant. What kind of factory was it?
It was a steelworks, which I actually worked in. I actually worked in that steelworks. When I was at art college, I'd spend the summer holidays working in the steelworks. And so I shall photograph that steelwork with me in front of it.
That's a great
and
one.
I know I've been in the offices of that steelwork, and they have the photograph album cover on the wall.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it is highly remembered. But yeah, it's hard to put. I mean, every photographer that ever lived wants to produce one of the most iconic images, and it's. Photography, to take an iconic image in photography is almost the definition of impossibility. Yes. Truly, it's like almost impossible to take an iconic photograph. And I'm so happy to have done at least one, certainly in this case.
So early in your career as well.
I was only out of art college 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty, you know. But in those days, you had to be technically really good because it was analog photography. You had no computerization, no digitalization of the medium. You had to be right on top of it. And I was thrown out of school by mum and dad to earn some money because we couldn't afford to live without a bit more money. So I didn't. I went into engineering, you know, and became and got qualified as a mechanical engineer and stuff. And by having all that knowledge meant I could embrace all that technical know-how.
You're quite technically minded, are you?
Yeah, very technically minded.
It's interesting because artistic people generally aren't very technical. So if you've
I was through default. I mean, I didn't like the idea of going in the factory, which is why I'll show you these photographs when you come over to some great reward.
Well, that'd be great.
And I know you filmed it. Some of you fans have filmed that factory because I've seen it on YouTube. You visited the factory, which is in Bridie Hill in Staffordshire near Birmingham, and you filmed that factory. But yeah, employing all that engineering know-how into photography, which was a very technical practice, you know, very technical process to produce images like this. You know, the first 5 years of my life on that factory floor and stuff, and in that drawing office and stuff, and welding and metal together, and I don't know, cutting steel and all sorts of things. Helped me to create images like this.
So obviously, as I say, you hated working in the factory, but that was a means to an end to get yourself, because you always wanted to be a photographer.
I was. Well, that's another story.
Oh, you just got.
Do you want me to go through that one? The girlfriend fell out with me, and I was heartbroken. And I thought, what can I do? So I applied to go to photography school and get out of what I was doing. But yeah, I'm so happy. It's interesting in life, you know, because if something negative happens, something really positive happens after it. So if you have something horrible happen or something that breaks your heart or anything like that, don't worry, because something fantastic
You're an optimist, right?
Will happen after it.
You're an optimist.
It always happens.
That's an interesting way of seeing it. I'm like that as well. And very often when misfortune strikes, we can't actually see the good until afterwards. You know what I mean? So you're an optimist, Brian. I've always said so.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Right, Brian, so a question I want to ask you, and as I say, it's probably a bit hazy because it was a long time ago. Is there any specifics you can remember, you know, off the time when you met Daniel and the band, when they told you, okay, we've got this new album? Can you remember where you met them? Was it in Daniel's photography? Oh, sorry, was it in Daniel's office? Or was it in a studio? Or
I think it was up in a recording studio in North London.
Oh, right, okay.
I seem to... Oh, God, it could be Highbury, it could be Finsbury Park. I don't know where it was. It was in a recording studio, I'm sure.
Yes.
It was so fuzzy now. You know, obviously we met, how many albums did I do? 4 or 5 albums. I think it could have been... I just can't remember.
Yeah, and of course, what you said on the Speak and Spell interview, you talked about how you always said how the band were there, but they were. You said they were there, but they weren't really there. They were always kind of in the background, whereas you said Daniel was really there. So you never really got to know the members.
Never,
because they were always sort of at the meetings, and then they would bugger off and go play.
They were sort of
video games,
professionally interested.
Yeah,
I would say they were professionally interested in the album cover. And that's as far as it ever went.
Of course, yeah. And also, no disrespect to them, I think they were very young at the time, so they probably didn't. And I think they trusted Daniel a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank God for Daniel, because I mean, as I said last time, is they they had the talent, but Daniel really was responsible for their initial success and the success today. And something that pops to mind was in the first series where we joked about Vince Clarke, how he moaned about your first album cover. He said it was like £1,000. And also there's footage of when they were describing the swan in the plastic. There's footage of Dave Garn saying Brian did give some kind of abstract, and he was kind of joking about the way you describe things. He said Brian gave some kind of abstract meaning, which is he said is the most you can get from Brian. I think it was his kind of way of trying to say he couldn't really zone into your artistic way of speaking, but I think it was said in good faith.
I really like David, actually. I mean, when I worked with him on Only When I Lose Myself.
Yeah,
I thought he was a great guy, actually. That's after his drug problems.
And if I can just quickly interject there, I only learned very recently. I had no idea that Brian actually directed the music video to Only When I Lose Myself.
Yeah.
And I actually want to do a separate video on that, because I think there is that's if Brian doesn't mind coming back for this. No. We're very grateful to you, Brian, for
it's fine. I think that was almost their final goodbye to me, maybe.
Yeah, but that was to me, Only When I Lose Myself is one of those, that's sort of the tipping point to me where I don't want to say I don't like Depeche Mode anymore. I love Depeche Mode, but I'm just saying is that was sort of like the last sort of, look, Alan Wilder left, then you had that period, and that was sort of like, to me, the end of their great era. And so it was quite good for you to be a part of that sort of. But I do want to interview you on that video. I think it'd be really interesting. But coming back to this now, and it's probably a rude question, but and I won't ask you for figures, but obviously they said you charged £1,000 for the first one, which Vince Clarke. And I don't want to know what you charged for this, but do you think it was around the same, or was it a little? Did you?
I think it'd be a bit more.
And then after this, you probably quadrupled your price, and they were like, "Yeah."
Not really, but I think it costs more. The next one after this, which is going to Switzerland.
Construction, and that's
it wasn't up the M11; it was over to Switzerland, exactly.
And I think the construction time again album cover is going to, and we can talk about that. The next one is going to be very exciting, because I think that was probably the most adventurous, as far as traveling abroad, flying up the Alps. And guys, as I always say to people, you look at an image these days and you'll see a man, with a hammer, and there's the Alps in the background. You look at it and you might go, oh, it's a nice picture, but you don't actually stop to think that this was before Photoshop. You flew up there with a helicopter. And
didn't.
Didn't fly with a helicopter.
I don't think so. I think we caught the cable car.
Oh, the cable car. But anyway, what I'm saying is you actually got to the top there, you did it. It wasn't like green screen filmed and done, done in a few seconds. But coming back to A Broken Frame, I mean, guys, I think a lot of you will agree this is an absolutely gorgeous image, and this is a reissue. And Brian was actually saying that you think that the reissues actually look far better than the originals.
And to put a glaze on the front helps to bring a little bit of sharpness and to the image. I think, it's far superior to the original one.
Yeah.
Although the original one is the original.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't beat that, can you? You know what I mean? The historical feeling of
this is true.
The original.
And guys, I want to say thank you to those of you who came to meet Brian and I at the MMX Gallery, because you had this on display at MMX Gallery.
The original, yeah.
And that was really, really, I just got chills when I walked in and I saw it. It took me a long time to get my head around it, because I think as you walk in and you see it mounted against the wall, your brain just goes, oh, I recognize that image. But when you really start to think about it, you think, oh my God, this is the original. And it was really iconic.
It's in a private collector now. He bought it, private collector.
It's been sold?
Oh yeah, it was sold, yeah.
Guys, the original has been sold.
It has, yeah.
So if you didn't see it that's
the end of it.
So did he buy it in the MMX?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Oh my God. So that means that image, if you haven't seen it now, you'll never see it again unless you go to
his house.
Oh my God! Well, that's well, congratulations for selling that. But at the same time, I'm a bit like, oh no.
I know what you mean. I felt the same. I felt a little bit heartbroken.
Yeah.
But it's nice it went to a good home, a person who really wanted it and had thought about it for a long time before spending a relatively large amount of money buying it.
You can't retire that, can you?
No comment.
So we'll encourage. But something talking about the prints, guys, and I just want to sort of, before we sort of wrap this video up, A lot of you ask me questions like, how can we buy these prints? And I've told you, you should go to www.briangriffin.co.uk. Also, but get in touch with Brian personally. Guys, he's very, very approachable. Guys, get in touch with him on
brian@briangriffin.co.uk. And I do a special edition of a really quite a small print for Vaughan's show of A Broken Frame, or Speak and Spell, which is the one before, or Birch's War, or there's a proper collector's issue, which is always only 21 in the world, you know, of those, which if you can afford it, you can buy that as well. But there's a special Vaughan little print.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate what Brian's doing for us, for me, and for the guys on this channel. As I say, you know, obviously, we can't all afford the originals and stuff, but Brian has been really kind to make this special offer, you know, to make it accessible to you, because I think, you know, we'd all like to own a piece of history. And Brian, you'd autograph those as well?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you want to buy a print, just send him an email, say, hi, Brian, give him your name and tell him, you know, what you're looking for, and Brian will get back to you. You know, you can just say, because obviously I know we can't all afford the originals, but as I say, Brian has made smaller editions of these prints available to you. Right, Mr. Griffin, so is there anything else you would like to say about this? Although, you know, as I say, you're not done with this. You're going to be talking about this forever.
Yeah, it's going to be on display, obviously, in Pop Rat in Saarbrücken, which is a big pop festival, photography, which opens in the German town of Saarbrücken. And I'll be there towards the end of September, and you can see it by just going on the internet, Pop Rat. I think it's .com, and I'll be there for 2 days. I think it's 23rd and 24th of September, and a print of this image will be in my pop show, which has 33 images of my pop music photography, and also has Construction Time Again as well. So there's 2 Depeche Mode images, A Broken Frame and Construction Time Again, in Pop Rat, which is in Saarbrücken in Germany, the end of September.
Great, Brian. Thank you very much. So, guys, as I say, if you want to get in touch with Brian, just look at the description below. All the contact details there. Simply get in touch with him. If you're too shy, get in touch with me. I'll relay it on. But as I say, just send him an email and ask him what you're after. And between Brian and I, will make it happen for you. And Brian, I'm really grateful to you as always for coming down. As I say, Brian's going to be back again to do the Construction Time Again album.
Yeah, that's the next one.
Yeah, that's great. So if you guys want to just leave your comments below, you know, anything you'd like to say about this, and then I think in a later video I will I will ask you guys what questions you want me to ask Brian. But Brian has been really gracious with his time coming down. As I say, guys, I'm so pleased to say that this is really an internet exclusive, or now without being boastful. I don't think you've ever done a series where you've actually talked about every album in such detail.
Never.
So I'm very happy to.
I've never done it.
I'm very happy to offer that to you guys. And once
nice
again,
to have the opportunity.
Oh, Brian, and is everly humble, guys. Lots of love to you all. Please subscribe, leave your comments below. Brian and I will see you on the next one, which is Construction Time Again. Take care of yourselves.